Good morning, everyone. Again, my name is Desmond Wilson. You heard a little bit about me. I am a 1984 graduate of AUM, so I'm sure a lot of you weren't even born when I attended school here. And this campus has changed so much. I spent probably the first 5 minutes riding around through the roundabouts trying to figure out how to get here. And I can remember, and it's a long time ago, 40 years, the exact. When I started out here, I think there were only 5 buildings on the campus. There was the University Center, the College of Business, the gymnasium. I think I've changed the name from the Science Building, the Goodwin Hall, and the Liberal Arts Building. That was all out here. And you couldn't even get here from Taylor Road. There was no Taylor Road exit. You actually had to get off on the Eastern Bypass, come down Monticello Road, get on Dale Road, and then there's another road where the university plant system, you had to get on that road to get here. So it was kind of a chore to get here. But I did enjoy my time here. It was very good. It was different. I was the first one in my family actually to have a choice to where I wanted to go to school at. My brothers and sisters, they all went to Alabama State or they went to Alabama A&M. So it was a great experience coming here. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the civil engineering of the Civil Rights Trail in Montgomery, Alabama. And some of it may be a little bit of a repeat of what Jocelyn talked about, but I kind of have again to set the stage for how we plan to change it. Not how we plan to fix it, but how we plan to change it. And a lot of the stuff that I'm going to talk about is documented. Not making any of it up, but there's a lot of documentation on the impact of Interstate I-85 and I-65 on the city of Montgomery. So how did I get here? Something I will tell you, be careful about giving interviews. I enjoyed doing the interview because I enjoyed talking about this subject, but when I saw this article out, it said that now he's in charge of rebuilding, that's when the pressure started. And a lot of the stuff that I said in that article, I meant it from the heart, but I promise you I had no clue how we were going to get to where we got to. So sometimes I guess you can speak things into fruition or into action, and it just happened. So the 7 Montgomery Trail, I will tell you, I am, I guess you would say I was a lap child of the 7 Montgomery March. And probably all of my life, because my parents were alive, that's all I heard about, the reason why you were able to go to AUM because we marched, on that trail, or the reason why you were able to hold the job today is because we marched on that trail. And it's something that still resonates with me today, even those days when I don't feel like getting up and going and deal with what I have to deal with at the city every day. I hear my mother's voice in my head. I always say, get up, get up, get up. You know that we march for you to be able to go and sit in that position that you sit today, to be able to make these decisions that only not affect the African American community, but also affect the whole city of Montgomery. So I'm motivated every day to go to work, and I go to work with purpose. But I will tell you, this 7 Montgomery Trail somehow became, I don't know, my life work, became what I wanted to do, or when people sometimes say, find a purpose in your life, this became my purpose to do this, because I saw it as a young child when it was a thriving community. I was there doing the construction, and I'm here now with what you see. If you ever have opportunity to go on the 7 Montgomery Trail, it's what you see now. And how I got here is probably about 15 years ago. Sitting in a room with a lot of, I guess you would call them the trailheads, people who have been involved in the march and stuff. And they're all talking about, what they did, and I honor that. I love hearing the story, I love hearing the history, I love hearing the risks that they took for a lot of us to be in the position, a lot of the young people in this room today to do the things that you're able to do. But something propelled me to stand up and say, yeah, all that's good and great, but look at it now. It's a national embarrassment. I'm actually ashamed to take people out there on the 7 Montgomery Trail in the city of Montgomery because of all the blight, all the poverty that you see. Nothing that you see out there right now represents what those folks who walk those 54 miles is there right now. So it's been my life mission to change this, to restart the process of changing. I don't think I will say I will live long enough to say it. I'm not going to curse myself saying that, but I will say that I don't know I'll be there at the end of it, but I know I have an opportunity to start to change it. So the Selma Montgomery Trail is one of 21 National Historic Trails in the country. So there are very few of them that have that designation. And it ought to be something that we ought to be proud of. And particularly as Black people, we ought to be proud of having something that represents what we can and ought to be. And if you look at the trails, they're all over the country. And they're from California to Arizona to Kansas, Missouri to Texas. And even Taylor Trail, I didn't realize the Taylor Trail stuff. Trail of Tears actually started, was part of Alabama. But they're all over the country. So as you see, there are only 21 of these in the whole country. So that's a special designation. This is a designation that the National Park Service does not give out very likely. When you look at Interstate 85 and Interstate 65, there are a lot of articles out there. You can research this for yourself that talked about planned destruction. And you kind of have to go back to the year, really, back to the year 1950 when the actual planning of the interstate system actually started in Montgomery. And of course, the key year, if you look at it from a civil rights standpoint, was in 1955 with the Montgomery bus boycott movement. So with that, you have that going on, and then you come 10 years later with the bus boycott movement, a successful boycott movement. Then now you're going into 1965 with the 7th Montgomery National Voters' Rights March. But the key thing about these two interstate systems, which I'll talk a little bit about more, they actually came in and absolutely destroyed a thriving middle-class African-American community. And if you want to know more about it, I would encourage you to read about this. There are numerous articles about this particular decision to run these two interstates through Montgomery, where they started. And of course, again, I mentioned earlier, the study of I-85 began in 1955. And also at the same time, you also had the study of I-65. I-85 ran north and south, north and south, and from I guess really from Washington all the way down and ends right here in Montgomery. And then I-85, I-65 runs from the Tennessee line all the way down to Mobile. And again, with this particular article out of the Journals of Urban Valley, it does talk about, the 1955 bus boycott movement. It talks about the highway state director at the time. According to a lot of publications, he was a believer in white supremacy. They said he actually carried a business card around with it that actually had on it that he promoted white supremacy. And also, the thing about this decision to put I-85 and I-65 where they put it, not only did it affect African Americans, but it also affect, African Americans also affect the white residents in the city too. But disproportionately, it affected African Americans. About 75% of the African American community that were on the I-85 route were displaced. And so you're talking about a situation where you had redlining in the city where, blacks or African Americans could not move to certain parts of the city because of redlining. So there were rules that were already in place that saying we can't sell real estate, we won't sell real estate to African Americans. So you end up with, a lot of African Americans being either going to public housing or they ended up moving out of the city because they couldn't move anywhere else in the city. I think another thing that happened was that the value of the homes that they were given for the price of their homes, I think the average value was something like $3,300 at that time for their home. So there was nowhere you really could go. But these articles also talk about the decision to put I-85 and I-65 was really in retaliation for the 7th of Montgomery March. And if you look at that that map, my arrow was pointed, but this is the route of where I-85 was supposed to go. And present day it comes like somewhere down this way, but there was supposed to have been a loop somewhere downtown Montgomery that actually got you over to I-85 to I-6 to I-85 north to LaGrange, Georgia at that point. But this was not a phenomenon that just happened in Montgomery. It was also happening all across the country. And part of the reason was that a lot of mayors throughout the city wanted the interstate systems to run closer into the city so they aid with transportation. But on the federal level, they kind of wanted the interstate system to kind of run out in the rural areas. But also the thing was too that where the interstate systems were being proposed to run, the land was much cheaper. And so that made the cost of building the interstate a little bit more efficient. So this is kind of a bird's eye view of what the interstate, before the interstate was constructed. As you can see, highly populated, very populated. The yellow line kind of indicates where I-85 comes through. It really just destroyed the community. Then you see the pink line, that's I-65 running through that part of the community. So you can see that there were a lot of residents, a lot of businesses that were in that area that got displaced because of these two interstate systems. And this is a picture of I-65. Well, this is I-85 before I-85 during construction, and that tall building to the left, I think that's part of the Jackson Hospital campus. So you can see a lot of destruction. And what you'll also notice too, as you drive through a lot of the streets where those bridges are cross going north and south, you'll see a lot of cut-off streets. You'll see part of the streets on this side of the interstate and part of the streets on this side of the interstate. So it cut off communities away from each other. And this is a picture of I-65 under construction, and when it got to the AUM State River. And the funny thing about I-65, when I think about it now, the danger that it put on the public, I can remember living where I lived, the interstates, the I-85 actually went in front of our house, maybe a couple blocks over, it was in front of our homes. And I-65 ran north and south this way. I went to a school called Daisy Lawrence for elementary school, and I actually had to walk through all the construction sites as we go to school. So we were actually, while the bulldozers and stuff were coming through, you were actually dodging all of that stuff. And there were no provision made for students to actually walk to school. So we were walking through that every single day. And you know, never thought about it. It was cool then, dodging bulldozers. And actually, there was actually, you know, when I think about that period of time, you know, I guess I was 6, 7 years old, really didn't know what was going on. I just know that a lot of people that I grew up with and played with all sort of were gone. You know, and there are people I have not seen since the 1960s that were uprooted. I hear stories of some of the meetings that they had with highway department officials and people that were speculating by the housing and land. There were a lot of people crying about losing their property, and because they had nowhere else to go. And particularly with the African American family, one thing that's really strengthens the family is their home. Most own their homes, and I don't care how old it is or how whatever condition it is, it's something that you call, you know, it's ours, this is mine. And so, you know, a lot of people that were uprooted because of this. But I never thought about until this presentation about all the danger that we were walking through. And it's kind of like, you know, you really, as a child, you really didn't know what was going on. You knew something was happening, but you really didn't know what was going on. Then all of a sudden, one day, you see the bulldozers. I mean, there was equipment I had never seen before in my life as a child that just all of a sudden just showed up. And you look at that area, a lot of it's flat, and all of a sudden you're like, where did they bring all this dirt and stuff? You know, it's just overnight and over a few years, the whole just complexion of that community changed. So, you know, it had an impact, on my childhood, and friends that I had, and friends that I have not seen again to this day. So now, you fast forward this to 2024. This is now you're looking at, think about the picture that you just saw before, the two pictures that you saw before, and now this is 2024. This is where what we call the clover leaf, and it looks like ground zero. I call it ground zero. It looks as though you dropped a bomb in the middle of that community. Nothing's there. There's nothing there. No businesses, no schools, no houses, nothing there. So yes, there were some consequences. There were a lot of consequences of 85 and 65 on the civil rights trail community. Number one, the economic impact. It was the demise of a lot of vibrant businesses, black and white, but mostly it impacted black businesses. It was the demise of an economic hub. I could say in our community, which is also called the Peacock Track community, it was a self-contained community. We probably had about 6 grocery stores, about 5 drug stores, lots of churches. We had lots of public schools, we had private schools, we had entertainments, had clubs. It was on self-contained community. And even, we didn't even own an automobile in the 1960s because to walk everywhere we wanted to go. And there may have been one person in the community that had a car that actually was kind of like the concept of carpooling. We were doing that back in the 1960s. But everybody, there was one person, really was only one person on the block could afford a car. And so we were carpooling back in the 60s. So when you look at the 1960 directory of businesses in Montgomery and the businesses around that, and I think I probably underestimated that 150 businesses were impacted. I would say probably close to 300 businesses were impacted by the interstate system, I-85 and I-65. If you look at the community impact of it, as I talked about earlier, you had the displacement of probably more than 300 families. Again, there were people that I knew, that I grew up with, that I have not seen to this day. Again, a lot of people felt they were unfairly compensated for their homes. The average home compensation was $3,300 for each home. Again, as I mentioned earlier, most of the folks didn't really have anywhere to go. You couldn't go to certain parts of Montgomery at the time or to live in Montgomery at the time because of redlining. So a lot of folks ended up in public housing, and which that caused another problem, and it actually started the process of where you had a middle class neighborhood, a really vibrant middle class neighborhood. Now you're having concentrations of poverty all over the city through public housing. And again, you had several street communities. You ride through there, and even looking at the map. So in the old map, we have these old, like 1920 and 1930, 40, 50 Sanborn maps, and you can look at how the cities were, we actually have a real grid, like when you go in other cities, where you can go north, south, and east and west fairly easy. So these two interstate systems really destroyed that grid. And again, you'll see a part of this street 2 or 3 miles over on this side of the interstate, and then you'll see that same street across the interstate on the other side. So it broke up the community. It made it harder for individuals to even go just visit people. So you end up having to go around or out of your way to get to the other side of the communities. We had the demise of a lot of social and education institutions. We had tons of private schools, tons of public schools, but I will say it was a very well-educated community. And we lost a lot of churches as a result of the construction of Interstate 85 and 65. And the visual impact today, and this is something I talk with a lot of our students that come from Auburn University from their planning. You have to think about long range when you make a planning decision. What is the effect that the plan that you want to put in today is going to make? And what you have here now is the cost of the civil rights movement, I guess. If you look at I-85 and I-65, going to these two African-American communities, which was Centennial Hill and the other was the Peacock Track community. There are no exit ramps to those communities, so it actually cut those communities off from the rest of the city. Today, what you see where I-65 and I-85 meet at the junction, you probably have about 200 to 300,000 cars that they pass at that intersection. And what they look over in there, they see all the slum and blight that was caused by this decision to put these interstate systems in this place. So, and then you have the deterioration of trail. I think what this did to the civil rights movement, I think for people in the civil rights movement, I think to me, in my opinion, that became kind of the demise of what, you know, my folks and other folks had walked for to have these voting rights and rights to, you know, to be able to be free in this country. So you start seeing, along with the slum and blight, you start seeing the dissipation of what the civil rights movement is about. And that's kind of what my charge is. When that artist say I'm charged with rebuilding it, it's very easy to go in there and put houses and pave streets and put sidewalks in, but it's very hard to bring back that spirit that we had as a race during that time. And I talk about that a lot in other places because a lot of young people don't understand what this movement was really about, and it's often talked about that, you know, it was a black movement. No, it was a black and white movement. There were black people in this movement, there were white people in this movement. They were voting for not just voting rights, for African American women rights. So there was a lot to this movement. But what scares me today is that there appears to be a lack of feeling and understanding what this movement really is about. And that, you know, that today as African American, we still don't have full rights to vote, so that comes up to Congress every so many years that they decide on, will we have that right to vote? And I just know if you get the right Congress in there, it could happen. So this is something that I'm hoping to reinvigorate not only the capital part of it, but the spirit of the trail to get people get young people to understand that your rights could be taken away from you at any moment, they could be taken away from you. And so those are some of the motivating factors of why my heart is in this project. So how do we get to how we're going to fix this thing? I won't say how we're going to fix it, but how we're going to improve it. This is a board in my office. I call it the vision board. And what I did was bring all my staff together and say, we're going to fix this trail. Let's talk about, you know, when you're going through processes, planning processes like this, you kind of have to let people get out, you know, get the bells and whistles things out of here. This is what you would like to see. All right, we go through that conversation. Then now, what can we really do? There's some things out there I know we can't change. There's some things out there I know it's not going to happen overnight. But this is the board that actually started the process of getting out federal funding to actually start doing something on the trail. It's not going to happen overnight. It's probably going to take about 10 years for all of the stuff that's on that board to happen. But we are at a starting point where we can start the revitalization of the Selma and Montgomery Trail. And for the city of Montgomery, that project starts actually at the airport, and it winds through a lot of the cloverleaf part of the interstate system, and it goes to the state capitol. And so how do we fix it? Again, that board has led to us the city being able to apply for some major federal grants. We have a Reconnected Community Grant, which is a Department of Transportation grant. We have a HUD Pro Housing grant. We have a HUD Home Partnership Investment Act. We have Community Development Block Grant. We have HUD Healthy Home Initiatives. And we have some National Park Service grant, and we also have some other initiatives that I'll talk to you about. But it's taken all of this and more to start that process of not only doing the capital piece of the trail, but also, you know, kind of reviving the communities that sits along the Selma and Montgomery Trail. With our Reconnecting Community, this is part of the transportation grant. It's a $36 million grant, and these are some of the things that we're going to do. In addition to paving, landscape, crosswalk, fiber installation. And I will tell you, the big picture is to get people back on the trail and to really see it as a tourist destination and to be able to walk on it, ride your bicycle on it, or drive it and actually drive it safely. And I can tell you, there's a lot of interest across the country about the Southern Montgomery Trail. You can stand out there on one part of it, near Fairview Avenue. You can sit there and watch the number of cars that come through and look at the out-of-state license plate tags. And people actually wanted to know about this history. And I've been out there, and there are people who are brave enough to walk out there on it. You know, they're from other countries that actually come and want to know about the civil rights history in Montgomery. So, as part of this transportation grant, this is going to start a lot of the capital process on how we improve the trail, how we make it safe to walk on, how we make it enjoyable, and actually just bring it into the 21st century. At certain points, and I can't tell you where all of this stuff is going, at certain points I know we'll have stuff like EV charging stations, we'll have solar carports. A lot of the bus transport centers that are on the trail now will be renovated. The bus stops and bus shelters will all be renovated. We'll have smart lighting, smart cameras. We'll have bridge lightings. We'll have smart benches and kiosks where when you're at certain points on the trail, you can be able to touch screen it and tell you things like, hey, if there's some history in the area, it'll be able to tell you what the particular history about this community is about this particular spot. We have we're talking about putting smart benches in where if you are a bus rider, you'll actually be able to sync your phone or your laptop to the bench and actually get on the internet or actually look at bus schedules and you know, and kind of plan your day. We'll have better wayfinding signs. One of the things that we noticed that particularly when you're coming from on the Southern Montgomery Trail from Selma, with the exception of the National Park Service signs, which are in poor condition, you really don't know you're on the Southern Montgomery Trail. And unless you know it, you know, living in Montgomery, we know where it's at, but if you're out of town, it's kind of very difficult right now to really drive along or walk along the Southern Montgomery Trail. So we're going to work on also putting wayfinding signs that'll point you to different destinations along the trail. We also got $3.6 million for this HUD Pro housing grant. And the other part of the capital improvement is that we're going to start rebuilding the house as it relates to, rebuild the trail as it relates to housing. And this is really it's kind of a calculated thought about how we're going to do this. We know that in part of redeveloping in the community, we're also looking at, you know, how do we uplift the people that are living, you know, in these communities along the trail. And there is a kind of a wealth building or generational wealth building component that's going to be added to this process. And for most African Americans, particularly low-income African Americans, wealth building starts with the ownership of a home. But also, part of that story is that, yeah, you can own this home, but how efficient it is for you to own that home. So we're looking at using new technology. We're going to build houses that are affordable, houses that are highly energy efficient, technologically advanced, environmental friendly, healthy housing, weatherization of existing housing, as well as provide job training opportunities for the resident that lives in those communities along the trail where these projects will happen. So this is one particular housing technology that we're going to use called structural insulated panel. And this is going to be a partnership actually with Alabama Power. And what our goal is to come up is to build the most energy efficient house possible. And this is a concept, a lot of people look at it, they may say that it's manufactured housing. It's a little bit higher than that, but it actually works on the concept of a styrofoam cup. You have two boards, it's styrofoam in the middle, whatever hot stays hot, whatever cold stays cold. But the idea about building this particular house is that once the foundation is done, these houses goes up in about 3 or 4 days, and they're under lock and key, and then the rest of it just finishing work. But the other part about it, when it relates to building generational wealth. It is estimated, say, on over a 30-year mortgage, you should be able to save $30,000 on a, in savings with this particular house, because it's very energy efficient. It's built in with a lot of healthy materials in it, particularly as it relates to asthma and other respiratory diseases. This particular product is mold resistant, can withstand hurricane wind forces, so it makes the insurance of this type of home go down a whole lot. So the idea is to not only build your house that's healthy, but build your house that you can also afford to live in. Through our Home Partnership Investment Act project that we're planning right now, the city of Montgomery purchased the St. Jude's Hospital building. The history behind this building is that this hospital was built by Father Harold Purcell back in 1950. Harold Purcell he was a Catholic priest that came from New York to Montgomery in the 1930s with the intent to build a hospital for African Americans. Over time, this is also campsite number 4. This was the site of where the last leg of the 7th Montgomery March to the Capitol. And there are stories out there, because this was the last campsite, it almost was, I guess you could say, was the demise of the hospital, because a lot of the doctors quit because Father Purcell agreed to host it to the walkers, for the 7th Montgomery March. He agreed to host them on the campus. And a lot of the doctors that worked there were against that, so a lot of them left. So it kind of started the downfall. So over time, this facility became an apartment complex, and we bought it from another organization, and we're actually partnering with a developer. It'll have about 60 units for elderly housing. It will be probably about a $35 million investment in this West Montgomery community. We also have a healthy home housing initiative. We have a $700,000 grant. A bunch of these houses along the trail were built before 1978. A lot of them were built in the 1950s. And a lot of them have lead-based paint poison in them. So this is part of the initiative to go in and make the housing more healthy, particularly housing with their children in the home that are under the age of 6. And so we'll be training contractors and workers in the area to actually go into these houses, remove the lead poison out of it, as well as get the children that are in those homes, get them also help too. And then we have a grant from the National Park Service. It's a research grant, which really was called the Civic Engineering of the Civil Rights Movement in Montgomery, Alabama. So what we're doing now is actually going in and kind of putting the puzzle together of what this community looked like in the 1950s and 1960s. And out of that, we hope to publish the oral history. We hope to do some NPR radio broadcasts. And we also, along the trail, as people walk, have kiosks that shows what this particular community looked like during the 50s and the 60s. And we're also working on a platform to digitally rebuild the Peacock Track community, where you can actually walk through it in the metaverse and create your own avatar. And you can walk the trail as a visitor. You'll be able to interact with different other avatars that are embedded into the software. You can ask them questions about historical sites or whatever. It will be able to talk back to you and tell you in a non-robotic type conversation. and truly, I've seen the draft of it, and it is truly amazing that you can get out of this thing and have a conversation with somebody that's not real, and it talks back to you and answers all your questions. So that's one project that we're working on, and not only get people hear the experience, but once this digital platform is launched, anybody anywhere in the world will be able to walk on the 7th Montgomery Trail, and they'll actually be able to see it as it looked in 1965. And you won't need the goggles to do it. You'll be able to do it from your cell phone, or you'll be able to do it from your laptop or your home computer. And with our community development block grant, we have a partnership with the City of Montgomery, National Park Service, and the Mount Zion Foundation. We have put about and the city has put about $1 million into that church. This is the Mount Zion AMZ church. This is the church where Martin Luther King actually got his start in the civil rights movement. He was voted in this church to be the leader of the president of the Montgomery Improvement Association that actually started the Montgomery bus boycott movement. We also have, because here's another effect of this interstate system that I did not talk about, it created a food desert. All the grocery stores are done, everything's done, so there are no grocery stores in this area. So we have partnered with Tuskegee University to actually develop a high-tech urban farm to actually grow food, not only to support residents in the area, but also we also have a project with that we're redoing the Fairview Avenue's Farmers Market, and it's actually going to support that project. And the other mission that we're working on, this is with Mass Architect out of Boston, Massachusetts. Mass Architect has done a lot of the work for EJI. One of the goals, future goals, is where you see the building in the back, that's the St. Jude's campus. Across the street is the shopping center. We're working on plans right now to actually turn this part, this is Fairview Avenue and Oak Street, and we're actually working to kind of merge those two properties together, and this will be the walking gateway of the 7 of Montgomery Trail into downtown. And this is a picture of the of the 7 of Montgomery March in 1965, and you'll see the house with the yellow circle around it. That was my house. If there was technologically a way to turn that house around and look at the front, I'll be sitting in my sister's lap on the front porch watching them march. And of course, those two pictures to the right there, that's 1965, after the march. Of course, it's probably not hard to tell in the top picture who's the little short fat guy who did not miss any meals. But that's my brother on the right. And the guy on the left, tell you how diverse the Peacock Truck community was. I don't know, anybody remember the group KC, the Sunshine Band? That guy's the lead trumpeter for KC at the Sunshine Band. And the picture below is my sister. And this is all on Easter after the 7 of Montgomery March. Yeah, we grew up on a dirt road. It looks like we were in the country, but yeah, we grew up on a dirt road. And I remember when we paved the streets. That was probably one of the biggest highlights of the community. Our streets are getting paved. So, but this was life in the Peacock Track community, and this is what Interstate I-65 and I-85 destroyed. And right above that yellow dot, you see that big building. That was the McLendon furniture factory. And that's where the Tuskegee Farm sits right now. That building is no longer there, but that was one of the biggest employers in the community. It died after the interstate system came through there. And the unique thing about that building is that I don't care where you went in the world, if you went to somebody's house and they had Victorian furniture, that's where it was made, at that particular site, all over the world. They ship it all over the world. And so it was a very vibrant community, lots of residents, but because of some retaliation and poor planning decisions, what you have is the demise of a vibrant African American community. And that's my presentation. Thank you.
We have some opportunities for questions, and so I'll keep track of time. I'd love for, who has the first question? Wonderful.
You said this practice of separating communities with interstates happened throughout the country. Do you network with other urban planners and with ideas of what they've done to try to remediate what happened, like your future planning here? Do you all network together?
Yes, I can tell you for what we're doing now, we went to visit Atlanta on the Auburn Street area. It is almost an exact replica of this, and now I think what they call it's the Beltway in Atlanta now. You should see the revitalization that has happened. The only issue is that it's a lot of gentrification. I mean, a lot of gentrification, and that's not exactly what I want to see here. I don't want to see residents displaced, but I do want to see residents do come in, and I do want to see mixed race residents. This is not intended to be a black project, but it is intended to give those residents that are in that community the first shot at home ownership, the first shot at the jobs that are going to come through. But I do believe that it does need to be mixed. It does need to have different influences in it. And I don't know if we can control that. They did in Atlanta, but that's kind of where we got the idea of if Atlanta could rebuild their community, which was similar, and then in their community now, you have the Martin Luther King home, all those sites sit in that particular community. And what I don't like about it is that you have some homes there that may be valued at $300,000, but right next door you got a home to it that's $1 million, you know. And so it's planned, but it's not what we're trying to do. But it did give me the motivation, so we can come back to Montgomery and do that.
Other questions? I want to ask, you said at the very beginning, I thought this was an interesting point about your purpose, the way in which you drew from your personal background to think about this as a purpose. I wonder if you can just comment a little bit more on how both your life and your training and the education you've received have really fed into the work that you're doing in terms of both giving you motivation, but also in terms of expertise and skill and the ability to do that.
Well, I will say, and I have a friend here who will probably attest to it, I think, but we really grew up in a village neighborhood. We had our parents, we had both parents at home. There was no thought about you weren't going to school, you weren't going to get an education. I can still hear my mother tell me, if you can't get an A in class, you better get an A in conduct. So that's how strict our parents were. So I think everything I am today came out of that community. There wasn't a house in that community that we couldn't go in. You talk about safe places. We had safe places all over the community. There were places that you could go to. There were people, your parents didn't have to whip you. There were people that would snatch you off the street and whip you. So for me, it's kind of like coming full circle. Never expected to be here. Never expected to be a planner for the city. I never thought life would just take you full circle, and you come back home where you know your roots are, and being able to affect it. So it's not just a job. It's more of a thing of the heart. Why I do this, and you know I work weekends sometimes working on this stuff and trying to get money in and talking to people and going to different cities. I'll be going next week to another city to look at some similar projects like we're doing. So it's an endless but tireless journey. And what I hope will come out of, in particular for the city, is that there will be a revival of the civil rights spirit that we have. And I hope, you know, and that it doesn't just become black people proud of, that everybody become proud of what we have, because we do have a national treasure. I can't tell you where we went wrong at it, you know, other than the interstate system. I think there's a lot of blame to care, you know, to share about it. I think some of it's the city, some of it's the residents that live in the community. But we do have this wonderful opportunity to take one of the few national historic trails in the country and revive it. And I can tell you, I get calls all the time. I get wherever I go in this country and talk about this project. There are people who want to come to Montgomery. We want to come to Montgomery to see this. We want to come to Montgomery and learn about civil rights history. And you know, I know what we're going through here about teaching civil rights history and you know, in classrooms and all that. But you know, you can't bury history. It's history is what it is. And so that's kind of my motivation behind it. But I would hope that for the younger people, we talk about how can you participate in. Well, the 60th anniversary is coming up next March. And come get in that march and come to all the workshops and lectures. There will be a calendar coming out sometime in October and November of all the different events. Start participating. Make sure you vote, come November, and become part of a political process, because a lot of people died, a lot of people suffered, a lot of people lost their jobs, a lot of people lost their homes because of, for this movement. So, but these were sacrifices that made for everybody in this room. These were sacrifices made for everybody. And I'm just disturbed, when you look at our environment today, how we forget about this. And forget about what this does not only for the city, but for this country and for this world. And it's not like, a lot of people say, well, we hear so much that we become immune to it. So I'm trying to come up with a different shot to give you where you're not immune to it, and that you want to embrace this and understand that this is a national treasure.
Dr. Stone.
Well, I ask this because I teach freshmen, and they're trying to figure out their directions and their purpose. What did you major in at AUM?
Criminal justice.
Did you really? Yeah.
And I made it up because my parents told me that it was time to retire to pay for the tuition.
Get that degree.
You need to declare a major.
Well, and it sounds like your life's had an interesting path to get to where you are now.
I know that we are, one more question. This will be the final question, and then I'll have a few announcements before we wrap up today. Dr. Manning.
Mr. Wilson, I was curious if you have any thoughts about the more recent displacement that's been going on in those areas, with a lot of development over in that area, especially maybe on the north end of that community, closer to Maxwell, with the communities kind of being cleared out in the last few years. And if you have any thoughts about, what can be done to kind of reduce the harm to those communities?
Well, Montgomery, Montgomery, when you look at Montgomery geographically, what we've been trying to figure out, a lot of Montgomery sits in flood zone area, 100-year flood zone area, 500-year flood zone plain. And of course, working with federal funding, particularly with HUD, the plan is always to try not to build in the flood zone and to move people out of the flood zone and move them more into a more urbanized area. And I would say that's a difficult challenge, because what I do hate, people hate to see with people that they lose their homes. I hate that a lot of times factories are located in these areas that bring a lot of pollution and health issues to these areas. And right now, that's something we are working on. We are in the process of doing a climate control plan to start mitigating some of these things as factories come into different parts of the city. What's going to be the environmental effect that you're going to have in the community? It's one thing to offer jobs, but at the same time, if you're going to bring cancerous smoke or pollution to my area, how are you going to compensate me for my life or for my health? So that's something we are looking at, and right now we're actually doing a comprehensive citywide housing study for Montgomery to start really have a more active role in where housing should go. We have a lot of infill opportunities in Montgomery, and rather than continue to stretch the boundaries hour and hour and hour, those places where those industrial are going, those people could come inside the city of Montgomery and live in nice, sustainable, affordable, healthy housing. So that's the path that we're walking down right now in my office. We're actually devising that plan to be able to be in a position to say, well, if you're gonna build this factory over here, well, you should also help us with these folks that are here, and maybe we can relocate them and help us build these homes that are in these areas that we already have that are already ready and suitable for building.
Please join me in thanking Mr. Wilson one last time.